started talking about my reentry, it was the first time that I actually heard the truth about what it can look like and what hunger can look like and what that added burden can look like on individual as they're trying to reenter society, right? So I think that that conversation that we had at UC Berkeley in the policy lab was for me the start of the journey of 1254. Honestly, it wouldn't be what it was obviously without Cameron and her entire team at Nourish California, navigating the technical processes for somebody that had served 25 years in prison. But truthfully, the story is the same for many people that come out of incarceration. I think that the fact that we were trying to address just the individuals coming out and not having a uh, way to access these resources that was effective and would give them immediate access. Um, it's honorable enough in itself, but at the end of the day, 1254 ended up being the single largest investment in the unity of POC families and particularly families of color in my lifetime. I really never looked at it through this lens until I started looking at who would be receiving the benefits of 1254. And in the state of California, if you guys do not know, um, if you come home prior to 1254 from prison and you were just wanting to sit down with your family and eat dinner, it was actually illegal for you to do that. And if you think back to why 9 times out of 10, people and families that are system impacted are receiving CalFresh benefits. And if those benefits are not designated, those federal benefits for the individual that's coming home from incarceration, it's illegal for them to sit at the table and eat these foods with their own family. So it was essentially illegal for the good portion of families of color to even sit down and have dinner together in the state of California. And to me, that's the real impact of 1254 is that removing that barrier to just having dinner with your family, right? And if you think about it even more in depth, most of the families that are of color are come from, tribal cultures where sharing a meal is essentially like one of the key components of maintaining the family structure. So I'm really, really happy to just have been a part of this work and um, super humbled by the effect that this work has had. Um, and also a really good part of 1254 that I would like to mention is the working group that was created as part of the legislation to address how the bill is implemented, right? And what that looks like, and give people like myself and our organizations that are oftentimes just fighting for legislation to pass, we can be a part of the implementation to ensure that the bill is actually implemented in a way that is serving the people that it was meant to serve, right? And that it is effective. And along the way, we're with the working group, we'll be able to point out other barriers and report those barriers to the legislative body. And oftentimes, I'm sure that they'll be addressed before we have to go through the strenuous process that is very costly and time consuming to pass legislation like this, right? So I think that that is groundbreaking in and of itself, to have a working group as part of the legislation. And so does LSPC. And we are hopefully trying to have that as a format and a lot of legislation moving forward to ensure that implementation is effective in and of itself. Now, I would just like to introduce our panelists real quick, and then we'll go ahead with the questions. So I'll start real quick by just introducing all of our panelists. First, we have Trinh Phan, who is the Director of the State Income Security at Justice and Aging. She is based in their Oakland office and leads the work to ensure low income older adults have sufficient finances to meet their basic needs, focusing on Social Security and Social Security benefits. And Trin is just amazing. I would like to add that. She has been integral in giving me much advice into the older adults that are paroling from prison and addressing their barriers. So I truly appreciate her on this work. Hi, Trinh. And next, I'll introduce Karina. So, Karina Apodaca German is the program manager at the Center for Healthy Communities at CSU Chico. And she's been working with formerly incarcerated individuals since 2020 and assisting them in applying for CalPresh benefits and helping them through the process to meet the goal of having benefits in hand. And she also works with them as they face challenges throughout the process, contacting their caseworkers for updates and informations or rescheduling their interviews. And I can say firsthand that this is a very hard process for individuals that are coming out because you see these stacks of forms that they have to fill out, and it's really daunting. So it is absolutely, imperative that we have professionals like Karina in the field that will help us when we have these types of issues. So shout out to Karina. And Josh Kleinbergs is currently the program manager for the People of Concern in Los Angeles-based nonprofit organization that specializes in homelessness. And Josh manages the DHS Street Outreach Team in Los Angeles and is contracted through the Department of Health Services. And shout out to Josh because being on the street, addressing these concerns of our unhoused population is absolutely my type of heart work. I've dealt with homelessness in my own family, and it is a very daunting process. So shout out to Josh. Okay, and if it's okay, we'll go ahead and start with Trin. Okay,
Yeah.
so how you doing, Trin?
Good, thanks.
Okay, so we have some questions here, and I personally would like to ask you about the differences in older adults versus somebody younger that can navigate the process. How are they treated differently when they come out and they're trying to access these types of programs?
Yeah, so I think in addition to the common challenges that everyone and every age group faces in this situation, for older adults, they have additional things they have to consider in that initial time period when they're trying to find stability. I think one is that Social Security, SSI, and other public benefits are really important. They're important for everybody, but especially for older adults, because for older adults, having income through work is less of an option. So being able to connect to public benefits like SSI or SNAP and to services like Meals on Wheels and different services for seniors is really important because we have those services to support older adults, and these are older adults in our community. They really need the services to do everything they need to do: pay rent, buy food, get medical care. And for an older adult who has a disability, they may also need to figure out the logistics for their medical care, make sure they have the medications they need in that transition period, and connect to medical providers and any in-home care that they might need. So it's really like any other older adult, except it's more stressful because you have to set up all this entire community of resources and support that maybe another older adult who might have spent months or years and got help from friends, family, and case managers in building. And when you're coming out, as an older adult, you have to do that all at once.
Okay. So do you think that there's like if there's just one rule or policy that really sticks in your craw that you could change, if you could change that one, what would it be?
Yeah, so I focus mainly on SSI and Social Security policy. And for me, one example from that world is how people who were older adults and were receiving disability benefits before they were incarcerated
Mhm,
and reinstate those benefits after release. So
mhm.
I think with public benefits, the rules don't necessarily align. Like every public benefit came into being and exists right now through like a whole history of policy considerations and political battles. So we have what we have from that history. And when we look at different benefits, they don't necessarily align because those histories were different.
Mhm.
And so here with SSI, with these Social Security disability benefits, you have a policy that came out through a certain history and doesn't really align, and it makes things really complicated.
Mm.
And so with reinstatement, you want to be able to reinstate your benefit because it's much better than having to go through a whole new application. Instead of going through that, you just go to the agency and say, I was receiving benefits before. You have all my information, so
Mhm.
just restart the benefit. So that's definitely the gold standard for how to do this.
Mhm.
But so with if you're receiving disability through SSDI, you can restart that whenever you're released, whenever that might be.
Mhm.
But if it's for SSI disability, if that's what you were receiving before,
Mhm.
you can restart the SSI benefit, but you have to do it within 12 months of when the benefit stopped because of your incarceration. And this arbitrary cutoff exists because SSI has a general rule where if you become ineligible for any of a number of reasons, maybe it was the incarceration, maybe you had more than $2,000 in your bank account, whatever the reason might be, they'll suspend your SSI for 12 months. And
Mm.
if during that 12 months you can fix the issue and come back to Social Security and say, I fixed the issue, they'll go ahead and restart the benefit. But 12 months and a day, it's like, once you get past that, you can't restart the benefit. Instead, you have to do a whole new application.
Mm.
And this really, it doesn't make sense when you actually apply it to formerly incarcerated individuals, because if someone had a disability, was
Mhm.
receiving SSI disability before their incarceration, then they're incarcerated for a long period of time. It's not at all likely that their disability got better. And if anything, it probably got worse. But in practice, you end up in a place where you have two people who seem to be in basically the same situation, and they end up with different outcomes. So
Right.
come back to the community, go to the Social Security office and say, hey, I'd like to restart my benefit. The one whose disability benefit was SSDI can have their benefit just restarted right away. But the one whose disability benefit was SSI is going to have to do a whole new application, including a disability determination. And if you've gone through a disability application or you know someone who has, you know how difficult and time consuming that can be.
Mhm.
It could be months or years before someone who qualifies is actually approved and can actually get that benefit to
Mm.
pay rent and do everything they need.
Wow.
So I think this doesn't make sense from what we know about disability. It's confusing for everybody, and it adds a lengthy delay before people who qualify for SSI. They really qualify for it, but they can't reconnect to that benefit. And I think it'd be better in this situation to just allow folks to restart their SSI disability benefits without a time period. But this is one of those places where the benefits came out of a certain like political and policy history.
Mhm.
And we as advocates, as lawmakers, as you all as lawmakers, whoever that is, all the pieces of that puzzle, we have to continue working to kind of work through that and say we can and we will do what we can to align those. So it actually just makes sense. Um, but it's complicated and we don't have that alignment in this particular area yet. And so it's something that you should at least be aware of so we can help people navigate the process as it exists right now.
Right. Okay. I genuinely appreciate that insight because I was under the impression that everybody had to go through the renewal process when they came from prison. So thank you for that. I appreciate that genuinely. And something that I also heard you say that I thought was pretty prolific is that, there are several different forms of support or benefits that individuals coming out of incarceration that are older could access. But they have a problem navigating that. And it's kind of sounded to me like it would streamline the process for older adults if there was like a one-stop shop for somebody to walk them through that. And even if there was addressing people with disabilities, like almost like a one-stop shop for somebody to help walk them through the process. Is that True.
Yes, I think especially not everyone needs every piece of help, but I
Right.
think especially when you have someone who's going through multiple challenges, that's when everyone is like, can we find a case manager for this person? Because it's not just this one thing. So
Yeah.
some people are like, oh, I just need a little information and I just need, or I need these two things, and you can kind of figure out the one
Yeah.
stop can help with that. But I think the one stop is also really, really helpful because some people are actually going to like they're coming into the situation from their own place and they have many like multiple challenges, and that's always the place where you want to have like, you want to meet people where they are, and sometimes meeting people where they are means like providing more intensive services because in in the place that they're at now, that's what they need to kind of move on and reintegrate into society.
Wow. Okay, thanks, Trent, for kicking us off. You really got my my thoughts going. I definitely would love to connect with you later on that because that is um I think that that's the way to address this population and best serve their needs. Thank you so much. Okay, let's go ahead and talk with Karina Apodaca. If she's available, please come on screen, Karina.
Hi,
Hi, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. I'm well. I just am super excited to be here and be having this conversation and get the information out to the people. So, if it's not too much trouble, can you share with us exactly what you think would make CalFresh Access work better for justice impacted folks?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I think being able to apply and do an interview before being released would be super helpful, just because as I've been doing the work for so many years, I've noticed that I'm meeting with individuals who've been released for a few days, a few weeks, or even up to a few months, which is unfortunate for those who have been released longer just because they're missing out on so much time that they could have had benefits, um, which is unfortunate because we can't retract and go back and get them those benefits. And so I think if everyone is equal in getting that interview and that application in right before and having the interview or the benefits start right as they're released could be of tremendous help. So that's kind of one thing that I've noticed, working with individuals who have had different time in and amount of time out,
Yeah.
that it could be beneficial.
Yeah, and okay, I definitely agree with you. We're all, hoping and holding our breath that during the implementation process of 1254, that is exactly what happens. Um, and I totally agree with you. Let me just say that, it feels good to hear somebody else speaking to these concerns because I myself, well, was unable to access the food stamps program when I came home, just generally because the stack of paperwork that is required was so daunting. It like practically gave me a panic attack. I didn't even realize like all of these things would be required, especially when I didn't have any of the information. I didn't have a previous work history. I didn't have an income. I didn't have individuals that lived with me. I didn't have, stable housing. I didn't even have an address for them, right? So it was very daunting. And like I said, I really hope that 1254 streamlines this for people. But I know what it looks like, but I would love for you to share and describe, in detail what hunger looks like for someone in reentry.
Yeah. I mean, I get a lot of stories. I meet with a lot of individuals, and I've had individuals who are struggling as they're coming out. And they've admitted to me, like, I've had the thought of just stealing food so that I could not be hungry. That
Mhm.
feeling of, oh my goodness, like this person could go back to prison just because they want to steal a piece of food. Just stories like that I get where it's just food. Why can't we provide food for them just so that they can stay afloat?
Yes.
Um,
So it's almost like a crime of desperation and not opportunity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, we think about the gate money that they come out with. It's $200. That is not enough. We think about the prices of our food now. and how expensive it is and how they just struggle with, okay, these $200, but they have to pay maybe for an Uber to get to their next destination as they're being released. There goes $50. Just certain things that they have to provide for themselves as they're being released. And one thing is food, but unfortunately, some of that money has to go elsewhere and they struggle to just find, something that can just feed them. And, you know, it's just hard. It's heartbreaking and it's sad to see that, food is everywhere and we have it everywhere and we just can't get it into the hands of individuals who really need it. And so I think just hearing the stories and the heartbreak of, the struggle of just being able to have a piece of food so that they can survive to the next day is just, I think, what hurts the most. So yeah.
Wow, thank you for sharing that. It really warms my heart to hear people and professionals like yourself and Trinh and everyone on the call telling the truth, the ugly truth, right?
Hmm.
About what hunger looks like for people. And I truly, I'm still struggling with this today. I work in reentry and I sometimes am really dismayed at the fact that it is really so hard to just access food especially when it's immediate need for an individual or a family, because we have mothers paroling from prison every day that don't go through the traditional process of getting their children back like that. Their families just give them back and they're fresh out of prison and they don't have resources and it takes a while to access food stamps and they're may not have all the forms or what they need to even identify themselves. And it's still hard, even aside from CalFresh, to access a food pantry without an ID, without an address, without, living in the right district so my heart goes out to you and I just thank you for your work.
Absolutely.
Um, let's go ahead and speak with Josh. If you're ready, Josh.
Yep, I'm ready.
Oh, okay. So, hi, Josh. It's nice to meet you, and I'm really excited to have you on this call and in this work. Um, I would I would just like to I would like to know, can you share an example of how housing policy almost prevented someone from finding stable housing, but where advocacy, support, and flexibility helped them to push through?
I mean, that's a big question in my line of work. The housing policies that affect our clients, especially if they're formerly incarcerated. We do deal a lot with with society's punitive measures of punishment for
Mhm,
clients, but they don't. We deal with the what happens to them afterwards.
mhm,
So a lot of clients are affected by like the registered sex offender statuses.
mhm,
Registered sex offender status is something that we often come across, and that could be anything from being in the streets. You don't have a place to be indoors at, so that's actually a label that happens a lot for clients for indecent exposure and things like that.
mhm,
So what we do as advocates, we try to advocate and we appeal.
mhm,
We have success doing that, but
mhm,
I would say that, you know, 99 out of 100 caseworkers aren't going to do that. So
mhm,
that's not normal, but
mhm,
that's what we would do. We would go and advocate that way, and it works.
mhm,
Um, Another thing affecting obviously that's housing is background checks, things like that. The landlords, there's not really any good watchdog on what landlords are doing. I'm not going to say they're not good. It's just, but it's such a huge issue in California, especially Los Angeles, that it's hard to keep up with all the grievances. So the landlords here pretty much can do whatever they want, discriminate however they want, and caseworkers
mhm.
are just have to acquiesce, so to speak. So that's an issue, definitely. Access to housing. Um,
Wow.
yeah, there's, I mean, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, one of the things too we come across here was hard for us is we'll have individuals come that are, they've got great credit scores, they've been working, they have, money in the bank, but they don't have any rental history because they just came from, a reentry program. So we have an issue with that too. But we've done some work extensively with Ban the Box. And Fair Chance Housing. Alameda County has removed that box, and it's actually not even allowed to be on a rental application any longer. I would definitely implore you to reach out to me at a later time, Josh, and see if I can connect you with that coalition, because it would directly impact some of the work that you're doing. Um,
sure.
and thank you so much. So I would like to also ask you a question. What Okay, how do I phrase this? What policy shift and change would you think would just totally change the game for housing and reentry?
Immediate housing and connecting people to intensive case management services upon exiting. Not spending
Okay.
one day in the streets, not releasing people from the times of 1 a.m. to 5 a.m., things like that. That could be a policy that's actually probably may have changed already.
Yeah.
Um, so there's, a lot of it is can be prevented, at the exit,
Yeah,
you
so
know,
like right from the start. Um,
right from the start. Yeah. I think
okay.
that one of the things is that we have is there's linkages throughout society. We're getting social workers in community colleges. We got social workers at the hospitals. We got social workers now at the jails and the prisons. But how do we get them all connected? How do we have them on the same page, or how do we make sure that they're not just creating, traumatizing people at those stages, which is
Yeah,
what we are finding. A lot of people, once they get to the homeless stage, they've given up on believing it that there's hope.
yeah. And like you said, it's really important too for workers in the space to not be re-traumatizing individuals, right?
Mhm.
Um, I definitely think that you have something there with the immediate housing because we found oftentimes in our work in Alameda County that you cannot really give effective assistance if you cannot meet the basic needs, the immediate needs of an individual. Because even when you are able to process them through for CalFresh or for Social Security or many of the other programs that are available, they're not able to, truly reap the benefits from a program like that because um, they're struggling to find somewhere to sleep. And then we've also seen, a lot of times people not having the appropriate forms and that adding extra stress to, the family unit or the support network that is allowing these individuals to stay in their home and feed them and so forth. So it's adding stress to those relationships as well, which are severely stressed already when people are coming from incarceration. So I truly appreciate your work and the honesty that you've had with us today because it's hard for somebody that's in that space, working with social workers on a consistent basis and basically in the capacity of social worker for the work that you do for all intents and purposes social work, right? And then having to admit like we don't have a way to keep those entities connected or to ensure that they're not doing more harm or ensure that they're knowledgeable about services in the area and that they're actually connecting these individuals to those services. So I totally appreciate you and the work that you do. Yeah, so here we are. Um, we if anybody else has anything that they really would like to share, please, feel free to do so now. And then we'll just transition into the simulation, if at all possible, ahead of schedule. Um,
Yeah,
but
no,
yeah,
Alyssa, you have, I feel like you opened up you've allowed your discussion and your conversation allowed for, I think, people to maybe have some great questions. I did, and if Josh, it looks like you had something you wanted to say. I really do want you all maybe to go back to some of that conversation around trauma-informed folks who are doing the work not re-traumatizing folks. If that would be if you could speak to that, Josh.
Yes, I could definitely speak to that. Um,
And then
and
we'll
I
open up, and also we'll open up
I
for
mean, what I mean that's what where does the trauma start? I mean, the trauma starts very early, the ACEs and the early childhood trauma that we've been discovering. But it's a different sort of trauma when it's happening when the people you're expecting, when you feel like there's no one there to help you, whether it be in your government, or your family members or your friends at high school or whatever it is, at some point, people get so like there's nothing there for them, and the barriers become so hard. It's like trying to climb the Himalayas without a Sherpa. And I always say that's what my caseworkers are, Sherpas for clients. And Sherpas understand the trauma ahead, around the corner. They understand you could fall off a cliff if you take that step. If you don't understand the trauma, then you're just leading clients off of cliffs, with yourself. So it's really important. Um, it's really important. And I think that's where incarceration and education are super, super important. I think that a game changer would be making sure that anybody who's been formerly incarcerated or impacted by incarceration should get a Board of Governors fee waiver for college. I mean, that should be a no-brainer at any time in your life. And we need to stop telling people that college is just for for when you graduate high school. People should be going to colleges, starting it in their 30s, starting it in their 40s, starting it in their 50s, and giving back the experience and what they've seen and learned as parents, as wage workers for 20 years straight. Because when you come out of college and you see what it's really like out here, um, you sort of lose that spark that you had. But when you've been out here for a while and then you come back into it and start the work, it takes on a different meaning. It really does. So I definitely think education is key to preventing some of the things for their future, financially and you know, ethically.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is maybe like having a streamlined process for trauma-informed care training would be great for, for everyone in our field. Um,
I
because
would say I would honestly, the streamline process is scary too, because you can't streamline trauma-informed care. It's
yeah,
really you
that's true.
can't. It's something you need, a degree in, almost, so to speak. And
Yeah.
that degree shouldn't cost money. It should just cost someone's time and dedication, and then they should be rewarded for it. You
Yeah.
know, there was a time in this country that I think, that the middle class, there was the American dream, whatever that carrot is that we keep chasing. But there was a time when there was actually more opportunity, but it wasn't for everybody. It was just for certain groups of people. So we're supposed to be progressing. We're supposed to not be moving backwards. We're supposed to be progressing as a society. We're supposed to be becoming smarter. We're supposed to be becoming more educated, and that's not where we're headed right now. So, and I don't have much time on this earth, so I'm just going to come out here and speak the truth as much as I can while I'm here, and inspire the caseworkers, the people that I'm working with, and letting them know that there's opportunity for them to make change. They don't have to be in the streets. They don't have to be, feel hopeless. There is hope. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really, I'm trying to inspire people in the streets to help people find purpose, because I don't want to get anyone housing if they don't have a purpose. What's the point of getting somebody a job if they feel like, they're just going to check out in another year?
Mhm.
So, I'm trying to solve problems, not just push it all along to the next generation.
Yeah.
Or
I love
we
that.
should be trying to solve problems. Yeah.
I love that. And I truly think like with workers and
question, Alissa.
organizers like yourself, we're on the path to doing that. And I really hope that the working group of 1254 is able to spot problems like this, within reentry. I mean, obviously inside of the carceral setting before they come out, to remove some of those barriers because like I know for me, one of the biggest things that was so daunting was when I was finally able to access CalFresh, was the amount of paperwork was daunting to me because I had received a life sentence with less documents.
Hmm.
And I just, the idea that I was just trying to access food, um, not give somebody a life sentence, and there was more paperwork involved in accessing food stamps, was, completely daunting to me. Not only was it overwhelming, but it was asking me many questions that I just did not know the answer to, right? And I wasn't familiar with the terminology, and it really was no one available to navigate that for me. And I think it really was traumatizing, um, to think that I was fairly well educated and, well versed on a lot of different subjects, but I couldn't even access that. So yeah, it looks like we have some questions. Let's go ahead and get to the questions. Cameron?
Oh, not Cameron. It's Corinne,
Oh, oh,
the other Jones.
oh, here we go. Hello, Corinne.
Good morning. Good
Good
morning, all.
morning.
Thank you for all of your information, your inputs. I work in senior services here in Santa Cruz, California, and which is just over the way here from where you are in Alameda. And one of the things that's exciting is putting all together what you all are saying with the fact that through CalAIM, which is a county-based program, there is a program for justice impacted folks who qualify for Medi-Cal. And that's the operative. They have to qualify for Medi-Cal. And it's exciting because we will be allowed to go into the jails and the prisons up to 3 months before release, and we can have them on our roles as far as supporting them in care management and those kinds of things for 12 months with the possibility of even extending that. The problem is that most of us have either no experience with justice impacted folks, or limited experience. I know trauma informed interviewing, but when you're talking to, my presumption would be that when I'm talking to someone who's coming or is still sitting in incarceration but is on their way out, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to set somebody back who's getting ready to come out. And so to the extent that you all could make recommendations about how I can get my staff, I have care managers, social workers, et cetera, trained to really do this work and do it hitting the ground running. We worked with CalFresh. We work with housing and all those kinds of things. But some of the things you guys have said this morning, as an example, fighting the background check for someone who's coming out to be housed. You mentioned somebody who had a great credit score and the money for the deposit, but no rental history. How can we combat those things? How can we meet them head on and combat those things? And I throw that out to all of you.
Yeah. Are you in Alameda County, you said?
No, I'm in Santa Cruz County. In
Um,
Santa Cruz County.
well, I
However, I'm coming over to Alameda County. We just took on a project over there. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you guys need any type of training or assistance in working with justice impacted individuals and going into their jails, I would definitely implore you to reach out to all of us or none, LSPC, or me personally. And we could definitely assist you in that, because it's something that we obviously do, and we've been doing for, over 45 years. But in addition to that, I would also implore individuals in your work to get connected to uh, our fair chance housing work, because in Alameda County, we've been very successful in, eradicating that from the rental process. So that even if a landlord does deny you based off, he did a background check or that question is on the rental application, we do follow up on those types of issues because it is actually illegal in Alameda County. So, and we've had great success in Berkeley as well. So, it's rather progressive, but I think that there's hope for this type of measure to pass across the state because we had the same type of success with ban the box on the employment applications. So that unless you're like applying to be like a caregiver or work with children, they really cannot check your background any longer. So, and that's statewide. So I would definitely implore you yourself or a representative from your organization to get involved in our fair chance housing work, because I think there's a chance for it to expand across the state, and rightfully so, it should.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, so any more questions from anybody on the call?
Ingrid, you can come on. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, because my microphone is broken. It's like way down here. So I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Better than what I
This
got.
is my first time attending your webinar. Ingrid Butler, I am a family advocate, forensics specifically for Riverside University Health Systems, and I am in the Family Advocate program. And I'm hearing such great things as you all speak. Specifically, I have a couple things. So you mentioned something like a 1254. I've never heard of that. So if you could expound upon that. And then I heard Josh talk about the housing and the challenges with the 290s. So that's something that I have a family, so I'm a family advocate. So I work with families who have family members that are just as impacted, right? Whether mainly coming out of county, some coming out of prison, but more coming out of county because I am county. And so, like, the resources are just scarce, or either they're filled. And I just want to know, like, where do you find the resources? You know, I am in Riverside County, so I'm struggling there. And then Josh mentioned something about, this is more just a statement, trauma-informed care. I pride myself on trauma-informed language. And the folks that I work with, you know, you can get all the training, even a degree, Josh,
Yeah.
in trauma-informed practices, but it's one thing to be trained and it's another thing for it to be implemented, right? Sometimes I find in our work, people just get so stuck, right? And when, you start talking trauma informed, it's like, okay, but you have to put it into action. You have to talk the language. You have to walk in empathy. You have to understand this person's plight, right? So that was just more just a comment, but mainly just wanting to understand more about 1254. And I'm an Oakland girl, so shout out to all of you all. I was raised in Oakland. I'm in California now, in Southern California now. And if you could just let me know, Josh, if you have any resources out here in Riverside that you could connect me with, because this gentleman, he's actually going through mental health diversion. And it's so rewarding to see families when I first start with them while they're in the dark, and then I see them getting closer to the light, the sunrise, as their family members navigate. And that's one of the things that I do. I help families navigate the criminal justice system or mental health system. So now the family I'm working with, he got through all of his treatment. He's in sober living. He got an extension, and now he has until the 22nd. And it's like, I am like,
Yeah.
really trying to help him the best that I can. So thank you so much for hearing me. I appreciate it. And I'm loving this. Thank you.
Yes. So Josh, absolutely, I would love for you to connect. And if you guys have any types of resources, anybody else on the call has any types of resources in the area that she's in, please obviously forward them. Because that's the one thing that we do find in this work, is that there's not really like any true like way to make sure that like all the resources I know of, Trinh knows of, or that Cameron has resources that we may not know of. And I find that, a lot of caseworkers, including myself in Reentry, tend to be a little bit secretive about these, because like we feel like there's only so much of the resource to for people. And I think that really does stop, like it's almost a little bit of gatekeeping, and I'm guilty of it too myself at times. Because like I'm always struggling to find housing for women as they're coming from incarceration. And there's two women's prisons in the state of California versus how many men's prisons, over 30, I think 32. And so obviously the resources are split in that way. Obviously there are more male resources, right? So like I'm very I sort of almost like covet those few female resources that I have, because I want to make sure that all the people that I'm serving can get into those resources. And it's really ugly to have to admit that, but like I'm guilty of it myself. So I do think that like if we were able to network and, share, we would be able to assist more individuals. So please do drop any resources that you have for her in the chat or contact her directly. That would be great. And real quick, I wanted to touch on SB 1254 since you did ask about that. Senate Bill 1254 was, it started as a conversation, like I said, in the UC Berkeley Policy Lab about reentry. That's where it started for me. I know it started in many other places for everyone else, but you know, it turned into people being enrolled ultimately in CalFresh before they parole from prison. And that is the idea, is that individuals will no longer have to come home from prison or jails in the state of California without a CalFresh card, right? For the individual. So essentially, if they were to come home to their family, and their family was also on subsidy, it would not be illegal for them to sit at the table and have dinner as a, you know, primarily POC families, right? So I really think that SB 1254 started off as a way to get formerly incarcerated people that immediate need of food when they leave. But as it passed through legislation and that now became law, and we've taken a closer look at it because we're no longer in our urgency of, getting it passed. It's actually a far more historical law than we any of us probably realize. For me and in my community here in Oakland, it is the single largest investment in families of color remaining united in my lifetime. So that's 1254, and we'll drop a link in the chat, I'm sure, for you to be able to read more about it if you're interested. Um, and yeah, like if you have any questions, please feel free to, drop them in the chat or reach out to Trinh, Cameron, myself, any of us, and hopefully we can get answers for you. And
Yeah.
then,
Yeah,
oh,
and I do, Ingrid, I put in the chat, I put our blog post, but I also put a link to the language. I'll also give you an update that the legislation asked to, the CDSS team that directed the CDSS to seek certain waivers. Super wonky, and that's not important. What's important is what Alissa said. It's that it removes ridiculous rules that made it a person ineligible to have access to CalFresh when you become incarcerated for after 30 days. The only way to reinstall that is to have this waiver sought throughout the state. Orange County did that in 2020, and it's operating the small pilot, and 5 facilities within the county jail were allowing for this pre-release process. We thought that should be throughout the state, and that's what's going to happen in October. By October 2026, there will be the ability for all facilities throughout the state to have this 30-day pre-release process available. And to Alyssa's point around the significance of this work group that has all of these people who are going to be a part of at the table, speaking to the various needs that include CalFresh, but other resources, and getting the input from people's lived experience. And so there's a lot, and it's really significant, as Alyssa says. It keeps growing in significance, and we just really want to make sure that the implementation takes into account all the things that we heard here, and meet the needs of the individuals, and also take into account this sort of community that all you all have spoken to, the individuals who work with people who are transitioning, and also the actual community of people who will be welcoming individuals home. There needs to be resources for those communities. Everyone is not going to be having people returning to their counties disproportionately, but there are certain counties that disproportionately get people coming back. and we really want to make sure we have those communities resourced with not only social services, but grocery stores and schools and all of the things that communities need to thrive, to welcome individuals back. And so this is not just about social services and more programs. This is
Mhm.
access to a thriving California and the thriving California dream for all of us.
Yeah. And to sort of piggyback on what you said is like I really have bigger hopes for 1254. I hope that the working group ultimately streamlines a reentry process across the state and it creates a standard of reentry for people in reentry. And I know that's a big hope to think that our working group could do something like that. But honestly, I did a lot of time in the state of California prison system, and I almost, for all essential purposes, grew up there. Um, you know, being, 17 years old when I first entered the department until now, about 4 years ago, I came home. So I think that what I'm trying to say is that oftentimes, if there is a group specifically just watching something and taking note of it, a lot of times processes and policies within the prison system will adapt and change without without any notice and without any advocacy or work on our behalf, just to let them know that we're watching, right? And that we're documenting, hey, this really isn't effective. This is a problem. And when there's somebody, watching what's happening, oftentimes it will be addressed, by the department or other entities without haste, just so that they are not, painted in a negative light or shown in a negative light. Um, Almost in the way we have the Department of Corrections now being the Department of Rehabilitation, So I'm super, super happy with the foresight of the individuals that worked on Senate Bill 1254 to create the working group and have people at the table that historically have not been a part of helping us, better systems for people that are impacted. So I think it was, it's really, groundbreaking to have, a forum where people and organizations that traditionally don't work together have to find a way to create a report and submit it and come back to the table and talk about those same things and see where they're at and have they been addressed and so forth. So I really can't say enough good things about the working group because, like I said, it stands to have the ability to change things without us having to walk it through the arduous process of legislation. Yeah. So I think with that, we're right in our time constraints to start the simulation if you're ready to go, Cameron.
Yes, I am, Alyssa. Thank you so much. Thanks again, everyone, for being here today. I am gonna let folks pause and do a little break, stand up, get something to drink, come back 5 minutes, and we will be returning and I'll give instructions and we'll do the breakout session. So everyone transition. Hold on.